All right. Good morning to some of you. Good evening to some of you. Whether you're tuning in now with me or at a later time, sending you so much love today. I have been wanting to teach a class like this for a while, and a little less than a week ago, it was like the full yes, you need to do this, and wanting to do it here on September 1st. And so I am excited to share what has been coming through to in this for you. If you're tuning into this, it means that you are curious about the stars. You're curious about the sacred sciences. And tonight we're going to take a little journey. I probably will share more of these in our time tonight. What we're going to focus on. This is a small portion, but we're going to take a beautiful little journey here through the stars together. So thank you for being here with me. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat and I will get to them. If we want to just like in this moment, take a few deep breaths together so that we can just really be together in this space. So from wherever you are, whether you're here live with us right now or you're absorbing this in a later moment, let's just tune in, close our eyes if you'd like, unless you're driving. Really just take some beautiful deep breaths in. Breathing into the heart and just connecting ourselves together in this space. May our hearts and minds be open to receive whatever is meant for us in this moment, that supports us, that nourishes us, that guides us, that connects us. And may I be a clear channel for Spirit to move in and through me in a good way, and move in and through all of us in a good way as we are all in this great transformational period, as we are all in search of our purpose, our place in this world, the things that connect us to one another, to nature, and ultimately to God. So thank you for this time. Thank you for these sacred sciences and these gifts that give us support and nurture us here on our journey on earth. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I made a little presentation for us tonight. And so let me get that started and I'm going to share it. Let's see. Nope. I see that right. Yep. All right. Now. Yeah. Yes. Technician.
Oh, wait, stop. Let me do it.
Share screen. Oh, you're so good.
Okay. 1 second.
Thank you,
You
technician.
don't
Thank
have
you, sidekick.
presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, let's just do this. There we go.
Okay.
We're gonna do this. Screen.
Yay. I love you.
Name of this. Okay. Just gonna do that. And there we go.
Perfect. All right.
Let's
Welcome
see.
to our journey through the stars.
Wait 1 second.
That's
There we go.
perfect. That's perfect. I love you. Thank you, love.
You're welcome.
I don't know about you, but since I was a little girl, I've been in awe of the stars. As most of you know, if you're in my community, you know that I grew up a preacher's daughter. And so astrology was not exactly something that I would have dreamed of becoming one day when I grew up. And here I find myself an eternal student of the stars. And so we never know what's going to draw our hearts in this life. And so tonight it's going to be a journey through the stars, and that has ignited my heart and supported me on my journey. And I'm excited to share with you. this journey. So if we look back as humanity upon our earliest times, the stars were always speaking to us. And in our current times, the humanity has become distracted. We become distracted by technology and all of the things that keep us from knowing the stars in the way that we once knew the stars, the same way we once knew all of nature. We depended upon the stars, actually. We absolutely depended upon the stars. And so what I want us to absorb tonight and really contemplate tonight is what has happened that has disconnected us from this way, and how has it affected us as humanity along the ages in our own story as humanity, and what we can do to create that connection again, because it's right here for us. So that's what we're going to journey through. I don't know if you know Robin Wall Kimmerer. She wrote Braiding Sweetgrass, and it's one of my very favorite books ever. I've read it many, many times. She's an Indigenous woman, and it's a love story to the earth. It's beautiful. If you haven't read it, I inspire you to read it. And she says, listening in wild places, we are an audience to conversations in a language not our own. And what she's referring to in this way is the language that nature speaks to us. And it's a language that, for the most part, is forgotten. Where we did used to know all the stars by name. And maybe they were different names depending on where we were born on the earth, what culture and what place we grew up in. But we would have known the stars by name, by their constellations, by the stories that our ancestors taught us about the stars. And we would have known the herbs, the trees around us by name. So I want us to be all inspired to know nature by name, as in knowing nature in relationship again. And tonight we're going to dive into the story of Yeshua, of Jesus. And we're going to connect some of the dots in the Bible, some that were written and kept in the Bible, some in the books of the Bible that were not. And David is one of my favorite writers, poets from the Bible from those times. And he writes in a similar way of just a love and a passion for nature. And he writes about the stars. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the works of his hand, and day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they reveal knowledge. There's so many signs in the Bible that point to the stars. And we're going to go on a journey tonight that dives deep into that. So why then along the way do we become disconnected from this knowledge, from this connection? And why is it in current religions, Christianity per se, that that it has been forbidden to talk about these things in a lot of ways? And we're gonna dive into that tonight, and I'm excited about it, because it's my belief that the stars still speak to us today, and it's up to us to look up and listen. So tonight we're going to journey into that connection, so we start paying attention as our own sovereign beings who can make a choice to throw out everything that we thought we knew, to invite something new in, and to really, most importantly, tune into our own intuition, which is key and important, the most important aspect of it. So we're going to dive a little bit into what is sacred science, and then our relationship with nature and the cosmos, some indigenous star wisdom, the story of the star of the Magi, or the Star of Bethlehem, the miracles of Yeshua, and then where did the big shift happen? I'm going to talk about tropical astrology versus sidereal astrology. And then at the end, I'm going to introduce you to astrosophy, which you might have never heard that word before and wondering, what in the world is that? It's a sacred science. Sacred science is the space where science and spirit dance together. where they're interwoven. And it is my belief that all science will eventually lead you to the sacred scientist, to the sacred sciences, right?
Mhm.
All physics will eventually lead you to metaphysics if you are an eternal student and you continue to seek and search, right? So some of the spiritual sciences are the metaphysical, quantum physics, astrophy, biodynamic agriculture. There's all different kinds of sacred sciences. So we're going to speak into that. And we're going to start tonight with our indigenous, our first people. And so along my own journey, I was always in awe of the stars. I was always a stargazer. Invite me to a fire any night of the week, I'm there, and I can stay up all night staring at the stars. I grew up in West Virginia until I was like 14. I lived in the woods. So the starry night with no interference from lights was my childhood. So I have that blessing. But the night sky, you know, West Virginia, like there's trees around. So we don't have that big sky view. We have the sky view, but not the big sky view. So in 2016, when we went to Standing Rock, it was really the first time in my life I had experienced the big sky without you too, you as well.
It's literally going from trees to nothing, where you
The sky
see
is so
just the
big.
whole sky. The only thing that's similar to that, which is probably why we were drawn to the ocean, is the ocean. because
Exactly.
You can see all that, except for like what's behind you, but the whole beach
Mhm.
is just sky.
So yeah, when I was little, that's where once a year when we would go to the vacation on the beach, I was so excited to have those nights when Dad would take us out onto the beach and I could stare at the stars and see so many more stars. And I was always curious about it. But something happened and awakened in me when I went to Standing Rock, and we lived at Standing Rock for those 7 months. And every night we got to be with the stars in a way that I had never been with them before.
Yeah.
We got to go to bed at night after sitting around a fire. So I began to think about the stars and our relationship with it in a different way. Before we had electricity, our eyes would have been different. We wouldn't have had smog. We wouldn't have had as much of a disconnection from even witnessing the stars. Yeah. So I would think about that a lot when I was there, and how, of course, there was a different kind of relationship with the stars, with the heavens in that day. And then I was blessed to start to know about Lakota cultures and all the different indigenous cultures and their relationship with the stars and the star quilts and the star stories. And I started to just soak up all of their creation stories, their parables, their stories. And there's so much beauty in it that it started to pull my heart in this direction towards the stars again. Now, Algonquin, they say that your birth date is the first drumbeat of a fantastic ceremonial dance of life. So there was always a connection to the stars, to how we planted our seeds, to when we harvested. So let's see here. Hey there. So stars in Lakota mean the holy breath of great spirit. Okay, Waninya Wonkantanka. Beautiful, right? The holy breath of great spirit. So I want to make some connections tonight. We can't go into every single culture and every single religion there is tonight. We don't have time for that, but we're going to focus here on a few. And because the Lakota have meant so much to me and I've been absorbing that, we're going to dive into that. When I found out that the word Yahweh, Y-A-W-E, means to be, or I am, you are, he, she is, this verb of to be. And I use the word Yahweh to describe God as the breath of life, right? Why, but it's spelled different, Y-A-H-W-E-H. Same word passed through the language. So to be, okay, to speak of those possessed with life and spirit, we say Yahweh. in indigenous culture, they are related to everything in a way that they speak as things are living, right? To be a sandy beach, to be a strong oak, thank you, love, to be a winding river, to be a hummingbird, to be a black blade of grass, to be a star. So this connection for me has opened my heart up in a way to relating to the earth in a different way. There are more verbs in the native language, okay? They connect in this way, to be in relationship. All my relations, we are all related. There is this harmony in our relationships. So speaking of nature in this way, we would have been in harmony with nature, with when we're planting and growing our food, as well as understanding the stars. Do you want to share a little bit about this?
Yeah. So in the code of culture, we have two of the main houses or the sacred spaces. Mm-hmm. Your house, which is the teepee, and then you have the anipi, which is where you go and have ceremony, and you go have sweat lodge. So with both of those, so as you can see on here, so in their culture, they had as above, so below, being part of the teepee was the sky and the earth. And it was, so you would have, the top part of the teepee would be where we would see it. And then you'd have the bottom of the teepee, which would be under the earth, which is the same as the anipi, mm-hmm. Which was actually the whole earth. Mm-hmm. So you'd see the top part of the earth, but you wouldn't see the other part because the other part would be in the spirit realm.
So there's this connection of as above, so below, this mirroring, this connection of us as earthly beings as well as spiritual beings. And you see this mirroring, right? And it continues. Oh, wow. What happened there, honey? I went all the way to the end.
Okay. What happened? Wait, I got this. You went way too far, and we're gonna go all the way back to
there we go. I love you.
The beginning. Maybe not have the thing like that close to the bottom.
Wow. Okay. So we have this mirroring. So another thing about indigenous culture is most things were passed on as oral language. Some things we have that were written on hides, things that are very important. Everything else was passed on as oral stories. Their stories are so important. They're passed on from one person to the next, okay? There is this, listening is sacred in their culture. Listening is an art that we need to embrace and practice and embody again. Listening has everything to do with our relationships with one another and with our relationships with the earth and the stars. So in oral history, they pass on these stories, but we have hides, right? And there are hides that show a map of the land and a map of the stars. And imagine this, they mirror each other. So the stars would mirror land formations on the earth. And we're going to use a Lakota for the example here, but the Black Hills and Bear Butte and these different aspects of the earth are mirrored then in the heavens. So, and then what would they do?
They would, oh yes. So just like most of the people back then with the stars, they learned to recognize where the stars were, and they would tell, oh, wait, the star's coming into here. This is the time when I need to go harvest something. Oh, the stars are moving over here. This is the time when I need to plant my seeds. This is the time when I know that summer's coming, mm-hmm. because the stars are coming up here in these placements.
So they would move based on it. Their migration was based on the stars. So they had their own mapping system where they knew not only when, based on where the sun was and where stars were on the horizon and in the skies, but then they would know where to go based on that because their maps mirrored. So
instead of because a lot of them were nomadic, so instead of harvesting, they were
moving. Yeah. So we see this. We understand that in the earliest days, there was a dependency upon the stars and in a relationship with the stars that was important. And we move forward. Robert Steiner is one of my favorite teachers, and his teachings that he left behind have been a beautiful guide for me and for many people. He says the stars once spoke to humanity, and it is world's destiny that they are silent now. To be aware of the silence can become pain for earthly humanity. But in the deepening silence, there grows and ripens what human beings speak to the stars. To become aware of this speaking can become strength for spirit humanity. So Robert Steiner was quite aware of how we had had a disconnection from the stars, and he devoted his life to writing and teaching and giving us a pathway to connect us once again with the stars. So now we are going to go back 6,000 BC
to the age of Gemini. I'm a Gemini.
Gemini. To the age of Gemini in Persia. And I'm going to introduce you to Zarathustra, who's also called Zoroaster. And if you've never heard of him before, Zarathustra, his name means the radiant star. He was a Gnostic prophet, and he founded Zoroastrianism. There's a big word. He founded the Persian culture, okay? He trains the first Magi or Magus, right? So enter Zarathustra, okay? Here's some things we know about him. I'm not gonna go super deep, but you might be inspired to start researching from the little tidbits that I give you tonight on all this. So Zarathustra was related to King Cyrus the Great, okay? We know who Pythagoras is. You might not have heard of Zarathustra, but we've all heard of the Pythagorean theorem. Pythagoras travels to Babylon to receive an initiation from Zarathustra, okay? So he was a wise man of his day, and he brings forth a lot of messages for us to follow. He introduces us to the 4 royal stars, okay? If you don't know the 4 royal stars, they're in Taurus, in Leo, in Aquarius, and Taurus. My sign.
Let's say that one's in Gemini, right?
No, sorry. The 4 royal stars. Okay, he introduces to the 4 royal stars. We can also connect that to the 4 ways or the 4 directions in indigenous culture.
4 seasons.
The 4
A lot
seasons.
of things come in 4s.
And so we can dive real deep just into the 4 royal stars and what they meant. So he introduces us to them. In his clairvoyance, he also brings this vision of the future Messiah, okay? His visions reveal that the planetary configurations at birth hold a secret to our soul's destiny. He introduces us to what we know of as our first horoscopes, or our first soul's blueprint, our first connection of the soul's journey connected to the stars. He connects this not only with us as humanity in that moment, but the vision is the sign of what people are to look for in the future for this Messiah that's going to come, okay? So he begins to train the first Magi, okay? And then this begins a brotherhood of mystical wisdom that's passed on through the ages to prepare for the coming of this future Messiah, the one, okay? In this time also, the horoscopes follow the descent of the soul. He talks about it as like the descent of the stork. This is where we get that descent of the stork that brings the babies. It was connected to our soul's story was written in the stars from the moment of conception to the moment of birth through death. So there were these points along our journey that really helped us understand who we are and our purpose and our gifts, things like this, okay? So this begins 6000 BC. Here's where this journey begins, so far as we know. Okay? Zarathustra encourages his disciples to continue the practice of following the planetary movements for two reasons. One, he predicts a period of spiritual darkness is coming when humanity will become lost to the pillar of star wisdom. You can also further research the pillars that are lost in the flood and then some found later. So I'm not going to go into that tonight, but that's something that you can dive deeper into, what the actual pillars were. Two, an event was going to come that would change the course of humanity, and a sign would be found in the guidance of the stars. Here we're talking about the future star of Bethlehem, the star of the Magi. He spoke of this man, a great king, a Messiah who would be born of a virgin and redeem the world. They will kill him, and heaven and earth will sit in mourning for his sake. And then he will return with an army of light. Then he goes in, then we start having the visions of the 144,000, what that means, what is the army of light, who is this person? This becomes the living wisdom of the Magi based on this sidereal Zodiac. So this is beginning of the Magi, okay? I love this stuff. Then we're not going to go into it tonight, but at a later point and in later teachings, I'm going to teach about the Essenes. And so who were the White Brotherhood and the Essenes. There are other cultures and mystic communities that were also studying this and preparing for this, right? So I was always wondering and curious, was it only in this tradition that was spoke of that there would be this Messiah, right? That was it only in our tradition that ended up becoming the Christian faith or the Jewish, right? So when I was at Standing Rock, I had many conversations with elders and I asked these questions. And what I learned there was that in many oral traditions, why don't you take her and let her go lay down in her bed in her room? She wants to be a part of the party. So in oral tradition, we're going to look at Lakota oral tradition, but in many different indigenous cultures, there are oral stories of a very similar story. Medicine men receiving visions of a future holy one that was going to come, a bringer of light, right? In Lakota, he's called the fallen star. Left Heron calls him the Messiah. Black Elk calls him the Holy One, the Savior. He's spoken of as the protector. Whew, got all the chills. The bringer of light and higher consciousness is going to travel from tribe to tribe, okay? There's stories that the fallen one comes. If you know a lot or anything about indigenous culture, their stories are usually almost always connected with the stars, okay? The seven sisters, talking about Pleiades, right? Bear stories, like even their creation story is Sky Woman who falls from the sky. We talk about when we transition, we take our star journey across the sky back home. So the stars are deeply integrated into the culture. So to say the fallen star, they're saying that the star falls from heaven and comes and is the bearer of light, the bringer of light, right? He's respected and revered in culture. There are many stories in their oral culture that talk about miracles that were performed by the fallen star, and that he travels from tribe to tribe, okay? So we see this in the Lakota oral history and in different cultures. And we're not going to go into it tonight, but in Hindu, in Vedic, in India, in all the different cultures, there are different spiritual leaders who have similar visions and similar stories and similar teachings, okay? So what was the Star of the Magi? What was the Star of Bethlehem?
It is known in astronomy as one of the most interesting things in the sky that's ever happened.
Most amazing phenomenons. Yeah. But we didn't, so people have searched for a long time to figure out what was the star. Several years ago when I started to get into this, I don't even know how it happened. I know it was a God thing, but I found this documentary called The Star of Bethlehem. A lot of this that you're going to see is kind of interpreted from that. He's a Christian man who becomes really intrigued about what is this star? Why haven't there been more research about it?
He had, so in his what is it called? His
Bible study?
It was a Bible men's study. Group or Bible study. They were talking about the Star of Bethlehem, and how, they put up the star at Christmas time that signifies the Star of Bethlehem. Is it a star? What is it? Nobody knows. But it's almost kind of like hush hush to like even go and look for it,
because that would be astrology maybe. And so he starts this journey and he gets drawn into it and he starts to find out things, and then he gets scared because there's a fear that's woven in Christianity about astrology. And so he withdraws himself and he keeps coming, God keeps like bringing it back to it. And so you can watch that documentary. It's free on YouTube. And yeah, it's amazing. So we're gonna just kind of simplify that tonight though.
The best documentary on YouTube is The Star of Bethlehem.
So what was it? He has these 9 points he makes out based on what is in the Bible. He uses a newer version of the Bible. I like to go back to Aramaic and Hebrew translations to actually see the words that are used. But here's some of the 9 points. The star signified birth. This is what we know based on Bible verses that were written. It signified kingship. It had a connection with the Jewish nation. It rose in the east. This was a big one, like other stars, okay? It rose in the east, but some like pole stars don't, so that was important. It appeared at a precise time. We know this. King Herod didn't know when it happened because he asked the Magi about it. It endured over time, so it lasted. It wasn't just like quick. It lasted for enough of a period of time for them to follow the star. It was ahead of the Magi as they went south from Jerusalem to Bethlehem. Bethlehem is about 5 miles south of Jerusalem, so you can almost like see it, right? And then it stops. The star stops over Bethlehem. So what could this be?
Yeah.
Okay. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem. So we begin to see here the very importance of Herod's death into the investigation of what could this star be. If Herod dies in 4 BC, then Christ has to be born before that year. But if Herod dies in 1 BC, then we should be looking at the years 2 and 3 BC. So what happens is there's this guy, Johannes Kepler. He's a German astronomer, mathematician, astrologer. This is what is interesting about all these guys, okay? And there's some other books that I've read that connect these similar mystics and philosophers and astronomers based on their birth dates and through the ages. Many of them have similar birth dates, by the way. We could do a whole thing
in December.
Yeah, so like
Birthdays
Sagittarius.
Like...
So there's a lot of similarities.
There's Sagittarius.
Of course. So there's a lot of like these similarities in that. That's like a side note. And I love that most of them are also musicians, these scientists.
Philosophers, musicians.
So he is a spiritual man. He wants to find this the Star of Bethlehem. What is it? He discovers the 3 laws of planetary motion. Okay, these are foundations for Newton's work later on. He figures out how to mathematically chart and study the stars and planets. He's a brilliant mathematician. Okay, he gives us this gift. Okay, so he's looking for the star of the Magi. He writes 2 books on it, but he never finds it truly because he's looking in the wrong time period. The reason why he's looking in the wrong time period, and this is why translations are so important and why our sovereignty and our intuition and our ability to question everything and seek truth is so important for us. We can't just like blindly follow things. We have to like continue to be these eternal students. He was reading Josephus's manuscripts. So what we also know, there's not a lot of history written about the time in those times of Yeshua. There's libraries are burnt.
Yeah.
There's
A lot
of the manuscripts are destroyed.
Also, they wrote on such tiny thin paper, skull things
that disintegrate some of them.
Yeah.
So we don't have a lot of knowledge is what I'm saying, but we do have this Josephus's manuscripts, okay, from that time period. If you have a manuscript from Josephus now, it's probably the one that was written from 1544 and on, just like, just if you happen to have that at your coffee table.
It's your coffee table book, like
such geeks. But you might
be watching this right now on your on your couch, and the coffee table book is right there. You
know, just so you know,
through it.
That translation has some misinterpretations in it. So in that translation from 1544 on, it states that Herod dies in 4 BC. Okay, so Kepler's looking for the star of the Bethlehem. He never finds it because he's looking in 4 BC. All the translations before that, it states that King Herod dies around 1 BC. So here's where it opens the sky up to look now between that 1 BC and 4 BC, right? Because King Herod wanted to kill the babies, right? Because he's just jealous and he didn't want this king to be born.
Yeah. He went on a rampage of killing children.
Yes. Yeah. So, okay, so let's look at this. The star rises in the east.
Yeah.
So the Magi follow the star east from Jerusalem to Bethlehem. Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. So somehow the Magi know the exact time. This is what history that's been passed on for how many years? Think about that. In this brotherhood of the Magi, I have a feeling that there were sisters in this too, because even in the Essenes, there are women and men that were astrologers and
they would have taught their children this.
Yeah.
So like, Mommy, Daddy, tell me the prophecy.
So this prophecy is carried on, and here's what we know. Okay, so he sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and make careful search for the child. As soon as you find him, report him to me so that I may go and worship him." We know that that's not actually what he wants to do. After they heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen in the east went ahead of them. So they're following the star, so we know that where it's moving until it stopped. So there's the other clue in the Bible. Stopped over the place where the child was. So when we start to look, did anything interesting happen that was out of the ordinary in the Middle East in 2 or 3 BC? So you can first look at, was there a comet? What's a comet?
There are 3 different factors that everybody, when they think of the Star of Bethlehem, normally people are like, oh yeah, it's the brightest star in the sky that we see today. No, that's the North Star. It's a comet, it's a meteor, it's a nova. The one thing is that everybody, it was something that everybody was in awe of. Mm-hmm. It had to be something that wasn't normal, wasn't usual. Everybody's like, oh my goodness, like this star, what is this? Yeah. Everybody was just like, yeah, in awe of it. So if we think about a comet, comets back then were not really normal, like back then.
They would have been what, like
so it would have been a bad omen to see a comet. Everybody was fearful of it. So if this Messiah was coming and a comet was appearing, it wouldn't be the Messiah. That would not be like the Antichrist or something for them. So we think about maybe a meteor. Well, meteors, they move, but they're only here for a short amount of time. If you look outside and you see meteors, it's just like a couple seconds. So let's think about maybe a nova. Well, novas happened all the time. It was something that was usual. You would see like, oh, a big star in the sky. So it can't be any of those things. It had to be something that was unusual for them and something that was very curious and very, well, to be in
Always,
awe
it
of.
has to be like something that they've never seen before.
Yeah, like
All these years, they're looking for this something that they've not seen before.
like if you just showed them a movie
Yeah.
back in that time, they'd be, what is this?
So it was none of
In the
these three
sky.
things.
Also, they looked at the sky every day.
Yeah, they would have known.
They didn't have any lights. The sky was literally their TV screen. They'd be like, oh, what's happening? Oh, look, there's a meteor.
Yeah.
So it was something to be in awe of.
So here's where we begin the story of this king, this chosen one, this love leader that has been prophesied about. So enter Jupiter. Jupiter is called a king planet. It's the largest planet in our system. Okay, so
It's also the most beautiful planet.
yeah, it's the planet of expansion. It's the planet that's was called the king planet because it was so grand and right, so big in that way. So what happens during this time? During these years, let me back up a second and just say, I don't remember the man's name, but there, a man has created the software now for us to be able to go back and do this. We know this now because we have technology and we have
some amazing mathematician.
Yeah, I'm forgetting his name right now, but I'll put that in the notes later. But because I want to give him credit. So we have software now. You can get a computer program and you can go back and you can look and see what did the sky look like during this period of time. Okay. So that's how we know these things. I just wanted to add that in there. So we're looking at this time and what happens in 2 and 3 BC. Jupiter goes into retrograde, okay? This would have been when they witnessed Jupiter retrograding, that would have been something for them to look at, okay? So Jupiter continues on its path. It appears to come back, right? Like it's changing its mind, and then it goes a second time. Jupiter goes into 3 circles, okay? 3 retrogrades, okay? So it will appear to stop. A retrograde makes a planet appear to stop.
It makes like a
elliptical,
if you take a circle and you stretch it out. But in the sky, when they're in that turning point, it looks like it's standing still.
Like it stops for a minute. So it would appear that star stands still, okay? Mm-hmm. So we have some conjunctions at this time. We have this retrograde with Jupiter that passes 3 times, okay? A triple conjunction. They would have paid attention to this. This would have been something they would have paid attention to. It's more rare, okay? Over a period of months, the Magi would have seen the planet of kings dance out a halo above the star of kings. Here begins the coronation. Another point, the tribe of Judah is mentioned, okay? And so the symbol of Judah's tribe is the lion, okay? The line of Judah is lion. In our astrology and in the Christ-aligned astrology, Leo representing the heart. We are in Leo season right now. September 1st, we are still under the sun of Leo, okay? And the lion heart of this represents the tribe of Judah, the line of Judah, okay? So as Jupiter was beginning the coronation of Regulus, remember we talked about the 4 royal stars? Regulus is one of the 4 royal stars. Regulus is the royal star that's located right in the heart of Leo. Yeah, so Jupiter begins this coronation of Regulus. Okay, the constellation which rises in the east behind Leo is Virgo. We will move into Virgo next, okay? Leo transitions then to Virgo the Virgin. So when Jupiter and Regulus were first meeting, when they first had the retrograde, she rose clothed in the sun. And as John said, the moon was at her feet. It was a new moon, symbolically birthed at the feet of the Virgin. So I don't know how many of you have read this verse before or know of this configuration. Here is the famous verse in Revelation and what is also predicted earlier in life. So this is I imagine, passed down from Zarathustra, because he would have known what to look for in the sight, and this is what they were looking for. A great and wondrous sign appeared in the heavens, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Then another sign appeared in the heavens, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on his head. His tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth so that she might devour her child the moment it was born. Interesting part of that. She gave birth to the son, a male child, who will rule all the nations. We're looking right here. This map is, what? You absorbing all that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Again,
every single time. So we're looking here then at what would have been the constellations, the starry map of the heavens when Yeshua was born then. This was a sign in the heavens, okay? This is his story written in the stars. And there's so many signs. The other sign is that Mary was born under the sun of Virgo, okay?
She was a
the Virgin was born.
Virgo.
Yeah, and she was born under the sun of Virgo, of course.
Wait, can we just go back here?
Yeah, sure.
So this right here just shows us where these things are. And when we're talking about Virgo or Leo, we're talking about the actual constellation. Because when we're talking about in the zodiacs, we talk about the constellations. So when you're ever talking about anything in astrology, like, oh, we're in Leo, we're in the Leo constellation. So just to
this is a key point when we're talking about the later astrology that we're going to go into. So saying right now, currently the sun is in the constellation of Leo. So let's
here constellation is in Virgo.
Let's back it up. Let's reverse and talk about Daniel for a second. I love Daniel. Daniel and the Lion's Den was one of my favorite stories. I used to imagine David just being like so brave, and he was so faithful. Like he was a strong, faithful person. And that when he, I know this is childlike, but like I imagine him like Snow White. Like he was just so, so in tune with nature and so in faith that when he got into the lion's den, like they were just all calm around him. Like he calmed the lions, but God really, like God calmed the lions. But
I always imagine him like him going down there and the lions were like, oh, you're one of us, and then him was just like snuggling with them and just Daniel. Like braiding their hair.
Oh, I'm with you, Timo.
Like a little teddy bear.
I love Daniel the Lion's Den. Okay, so he's persecuted, he still just has faith. Any story like that in any culture, I'm about it. Where we can continue to have faith in the midst of suffering. So Archangel Gabriel is one of my favorite angels. By the way, the 4 directions, the 4 royal stars also connect with 4 of the angels. Need to connect with them. We can go deeper into that later. Okay, so Archangel Gabriel visits Daniel with a vision. And this is another part that's so important to the story. It's like there were these visions given to people all along the way to point things out. And let me remind you that I used to think, oh, only miracles happen in times of the Bible, or only, people could only see an angel then, and that is just not the truth. It can happen to any of us to witness that and to experience that and have these visions. So Daniel has this vision. Okay, while I was still in prayer, Gabriel, the man I had seen earlier in a vision, came to me with a swift flight about the time of the evening sacrifice. He instructed me and said to me, Daniel, I have now come to give you insight and understanding. As soon as you begin to pray, an answer was given, which I have come to tell you, for you are highly esteemed. No one understands this, from the issuing of the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the anointed one, the ruler, comes. There will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens, and after the 62 sevens, the anointed one will be cut off. Goes further, he is telling Daniel about Yeshua's coming, the Christ coming, the Messiah coming, and he's predicting, he's telling him about his death to give him the sign. Okay, I didn't do the mathematics here for you. If you want that, I can send you that of how they do the mathematics, because you have to take into account that we didn't have the Gregorian calendar then, so we didn't have a 365-day year. We had we used 360 in the cycle of the sun and the seasons. So you have to do the mathematics in that. But when you do the actual mathematics of the time, you come to April 3rd, 33 AD, the day of the crucifixion, the day that Jesus is killed.
Wait, one second.
Okay. Yeah.
I wanted to look
The
up
sun will be
end
turned
number.
to darkness and the moon to blood. Then Peter stood up with the 11, raised his voice and addressed the crowd. Fellow Jews and all of you who live in Jerusalem, let me explain this to you. Listen carefully to what I say. These men are not drunk. Okay, so what's happening is the disciples are like speaking in tongues, but the people think that they are drunk. Okay, no, this is what was spoken by the prophet. In the last days, God says, I will pour out my spirit on the people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions. Your old men will dream dreams. And even on my servants, both men and women, I will pour out my spirit in those days, and they will prophesy. I will show wonders in the heaven above and signs on the earth below, blood and fire and billows of smoke. The sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and the glorious day of the Lord. And everyone who calls the name of Yahweh will be transformed. Imagine, okay, on the day of the crucifixion, she's crying.
No, it's okay. She's just
on the day of the crucifixion. What we know of the time frame is from 12 to 3. Would you go feed her maybe in there? Yeah. From 12 to 3. When Jesus dies, the moon turns blood red. Okay. And there's the earthquakes, right? All of nature shows up for this moment to reveal God. Okay. If you just sit with that for a moment and think about what that would feel like to be there in that moment, and then all of nature, the stars, the earth, play a part in speaking to this story. Okay. And then when we look into the sky, into the constellations of this time, this is his story written in the stars. He's conceived under this rare constellation, this rare map, right? The crown of 12 stars, the Virgin, and the moon at her feet. And in the moment he dies, the moon under his feet, again, the same exact constellation, but yet this time at the end of the cycle of his life, the moon is red. The moon is a blood moon.
And the sky literally turns red.
And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. We had this same configuration a few years ago. This period of 2020 to 27, there are a lot of things in the heavens that are pointing to signs from the past. Okay, so we just experienced this again. Okay, so there will be signs in the heaven. The stars will, and the sun and the moon, they will speak to us. God gave us this gift. The stars are speaking. Are we listening? And the fact that Yeshua, the chosen one, the fallen star, the anointed one, the protector, the holy one, the love leader, his life is so brilliantly written in the stars in this way. How could there not be anything more beautiful to point us to God, to point us towards how important our relationship is with the stars, with the planets, with the earth, with ourselves, okay? I wanted to speak to King David for a minute. And, I've been studying this different type of astrology, which I'm going to introduce you all to here in just a little bit. But in this astrology, he's gone back and recorded when Jesus performed certain miracles and what did the skies look like? What was the map of the heavens telling us then? Because we can use those as clues to when those cycles, nature is cyclical, everything has cycles and patterns. So we are given these patterns to look ahead. The reason astrology got such, people, even if you watch the Star of Bethlehem documentary, he says things about how astrology is not of God, in that it was believed to predict the future.
You don't want astrology to run your life.
You don't want it. Yes, exactly. But if we can use it as pinpoints for our own self-awareness, for our own transformations, then it is a brilliant tool, right? It can tell us what's happened under these stars before so that we can be aware, okay? We can make a different choice perhaps. We can be aware of the energy of that time, okay? So let's look at King David for a minute. King David, King David was a he wrote the Psalms as a poet, right? And in this Psalms, he's talking about how the heavens declare the glory of God, of Yahweh, and the firmament shows the works of their hands. Day under day utters, in other words, it pours forth speech, and the night reveals knowledge. So he's talking here about how the stars give us knowledge, right? There's knowledge written in this. There is no speech nor words where their voice will not be heard. And in my opinion, I'm believing him to mean God's voice cannot be heard. So there's no place that God's voice cannot be heard. I mean, spirit can talk to you through a song on the radio, through sitting with your back to a tree, through a homeless man that you meet on the street. Quite a lot of angels will show up in that way. So God can speak to us in any ways and absolutely speaks to us in the heavens, right? The law of Yahweh is perfect and converts or transforms the soul. I love that part. So another thing I wanted to share, in case you don't know the story, is we're talking about the line of Judah, we're talking about Yeshua. So where does Yeshua's bloodline descend from? These two people, King David and Bathsheba. And if you know the story of Bathsheba, it's just very interesting that Jesus chooses this bloodline to go back to King David and Bathsheba, right? Bathsheba is, she has an affair with King David, okay? And from there, the child that is born from that line comes Jesus eventually, okay? Which is a powerful part of the story. There's no coincidences and everything. So we could spend many, many classes talking about the connections in Yeshua's miracles on earth, and also in oral story, oral traditions from the Lakota, and the connections with the stars then to point us towards the future, to teach us about the past, to teach us about ourselves. But for right now, I want to go into, we're going to move forward because of time tonight. But by the 2nd century, the astronomical work of Zarathustra and the Magi begins to fade. Okay, we don't hear a lot more from them. What we know of the Essenes, that the Brotherhood of the Essenes, which there were sisters in the Essenes as well, but those become more reserved and hidden societies. And we know that the teachings still continue, but the work of Zarathustra begins to fade. Enter Greek astronomer, mathematician, Claudius Ptolemy. Okay, here's where a shift happens. And this is what I want to talk about tonight to see, well, where did this shift happen? Because the Magi, up until Yeshua's birth and through his life, sure, and absolutely during Yeshua's life, Yeshua would have been teaching through the stars and been connected in that way, right? So then after his death, we're looking here now around the time of Ptolemy. Ptolemy is a mathematician who's also a cartographer. He's a map maker, and he creates a star catalog for us, for the world. And from that star catalog, he creates a map of the stars' heavens, okay? And that map is what we currently have in our hands, that is called the tropical or Western astrology system, that most of humanity continues to this day to use. Vedic astrology continued to look up. They continued to contemplate the stars. They continued to be in union with them, to listen, to be in relationship. As in, we are all related. They continue to be in relationship and follow the planets in their rites and rituals, and they're just in their system, in their normal day of life. And the same with indigenous people. They would have continued. They continued to watch the stars, be in harmony with them, have a relationship with them, okay? They weren't using these maps. But what we see in the Roman Catholic and fast forward through the Babylonian times, we have this map created, okay? So we can understand this shift that happens based on Virgo, because some of the things that happen when he creates this map, it's almost exactly to, at the time, which would have been the sidereal system, like the planets were, the sun was beginning in Aries then, right? So mathematically, it was almost aligned, okay? But one thing that happens up until that time, the Virgo is seen as the queen of the stars. Virgo is so important. Look back to where Virgo was when Yeshua was born, and when he died, his mother is born under the sun and that. So it is the time of harvest. In Egypt, we have the stories of Isis, who holds Horus. Okay, the constellation was seen as the divine feminine, a woman that holds either corn in indigenous culture or wheat, right? Holding a divine child. This was the symbology. Virgo, the virgin, the queen of the heavens, okay? Daughter of heaven, queen of the stars. In India, she was known as mother of Krishna. In indigenous culture, it was known as the bear, which represented intuition, okay? So we have this symbol, okay? Her holding something. When Ptolemy comes along, he doesn't visualize her as holding this sheath. His image of her is that she's a woman that reclines backwards. We can even see this in images moving forward, where she's not holding anything. Her arms are to her side, and she's just leaning backwards. So philosophers pinpoint this time as, they call it dethroning the virgin, okay? It was also symbolized that Virgo stands in the middle between the past, what has already come, and the future of what is yet to come. So we have this pinpoint where tropical astrology is created, this map, where they begin to look down at this map instead of being connected, where they see the virgin differently.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's actually, if you think about it, the first time that we started to look down and then continue to look down at things, maps, and then phones and computers and all that type of stuff, instead of looking up.
Yeah. So Virgo is a very important part of the transformational journey through the Zodiac, and that's how I see the Zodiac, as this brilliant transformational story that we can take, whether we connect it to our soul's blueprint, whether you believe that or not, that God imprinted us on the moment of our birth, conception as well, and that gave us this guiding blueprint. If you don't even believe that, or don't want to give energy to that, or and you just took the transformational journey from Aries, the mind, the head, the ram, all the way through Pisces, it's this brilliant spiritual journey of transformation, okay? And what we see here is a huge shift that happens, okay, in Virgo. Virgo represented the fertile ground for the forces that generate from the sun, from Christ, okay, the divine feminine. What do we hear to speak of so much lately? The rise of the divine feminine, the rebirth of the divine feminine, Sophia Christ, the Sophia wisdom, right? That we're, the heart of the mother is Sophia. Down with the patriarchy. No, we're balancing. We're coming back into balance with our divine masculine and divine feminine. And philosophize all you want, but some people believe that there was this point here where Ptolemy dethrones the queen, the virgin, in this way. And there's a different version of Virgo and a different map that starts to be used, okay? So what we know is that we have this wobble, okay? I'm not gonna even go into all the science of that because again, we don't have time for that tonight, but every 72 years, we shift 1 degree out of alignment with that map.
If you think about it, all the planets move. We're constantly going round and round the earth. And if you look at it over time, I mean, if you even think about it to when our galaxy was made, it was just a whole bunch of rocks or whatever floating around. And then they all of a sudden they come together and they create a planet. And even in that, they start to try to figure out their orbit. And then their orbit shifts. And we to this day know that our orbit is shifting still. We're always moving.
It's forming.
And either shifting outwards or shifting inwards, always moving. And even the earth moves too. It shifts back and forth. It's how we have the seasons. It shifts this way and that way and this way and that way. And even in that, it shifts a little bit different every so often, maybe like barely a centimeter, or what even is smaller than a centimeter. So it's changing. For there to be a map of the stars and to have it be in place is impossible.
Well, because we have computers now.
But yes, and computers, but we have to acknowledge with the planets. Yes. But to have a written map is impossible to keep in place.
So I like to think of it as the Earth's heartbeat. It's once every 72 years. Because when I figured out that the human heartbeat 72 times per minute, I had this like teary-eyed moment with God. I was like, what? I've been like teaching about how we're out of alignment with tropical astrology because every 72 years we shift 1 degree, right? So we are now 24 degrees out of alignment with that old map. And we will continue to shift. People believe that we're now in the age of Aquarius. Well, no, we're in the age of Pisces. Yeah, so we're moving a motion of 72 years per degree at 6.25 degrees. The age of Aquarius doesn't begin until 2376. So again, it's important to be questioning things, to trust your intuition, for you to have your own connection to spirits and to feel what's truth. I get the God chills. I have like moments now that I know I can feel things of what is truth or not, right? And I know how my intuition works. So we want to be able to understand these things on ourselves. So I want to show you a few different things. What's the difference between astronomy and astrology first? Okay, astronomy is a study of celestial objects and phenomenon. It's a term that studies everything beyond Earth's atmosphere, okay? There's all different types of astronomy. There's astrophysics, astrogeology, astrometry, astrobiology, okay? So there's different types of astronomy, okay? Ooh, yes, I love that. Okay, so there are astronomers, and astronomers are basically studying the mathematics of exactly where the planets are. So they're studying celestial bodies, they're studying rocks, they're studying physics. That's what astronomy is, okay? Astrology, astro meaning star, ology meaning logic, the mind, It's a type of divination that involves forecasting of earthly and human events through the observation and interpretation of fixed stars, the sun, the moon, and the planets. That's the definition in like Wikipedia or Britannica or something, okay? So yes, astrology in this way forecasts events in a lot of ways. That's where we got horoscopes in that way, okay? In the time of Yeshua, astrology was a capital offense. That tells you something too. There already began this like punishing people for questioning and thinking and contemplating the stars, trying to predict what would happen. Imagine that when people like King Herod find out that there's been these visionaries like Zarathustra and the Magi, that God has given signs in the heavens, right? And so when I contemplate this, I put myself in that time, the powers that be that are power hungry and control hungry, they want to keep them, they would want to keep that power to themselves, and they wouldn't want the people to have it. It's the same with like the Catholic Church, where the Catholic Church had you have to pray to the priest and you couldn't reach God on your own. So there's these kind of things that disconnect. So I wonder why astrology would have been persecuted in that way.
Which actually the Catholic Church in the Gregorian calendar, they had a part to play in making the Gregorian calendar.
Yeah, that's right. When tropical astrology was created, when Ptolemy made that map, it correlates with the Gregorian calendar. We created the Gregorian calendar. So Rudolf Steiner, if you know Rudolf Steiner, you know, like, I love this man. Just a beautiful soul that has given us so much to think about, so much to contemplate, whether we agree with things or not, he gave us so much to contemplate. A philosopher, a mathematician. He was the founder of an esoteric spiritual movement known as Anthroposophy, which involves spirituality and natural sciences. Okay. He wanted to connect us spiritually with nature. And basically, he wanted to just remind us of our connection, our spiritual connection with nature, okay? So he created things like biodynamic agriculture. He was working with the medical field on naturopathic ways, herbalism, okay? The amount of books the man wrote in his life are profound. We get the Waldorf School from this. He writes Christianity as a mystical fact, the calendar of the soul. He writes about Archangel Michael. He's changing how we see our children, okay? And how we raise our children in a more spiritual way. He writes books upon the life of Jesus and Christ, the philosophy of freedom. And from this is from his work is where we get Astrosophy, which I wanted to share with you, which you've not heard about before then. Waldorf School, sorry, what did I say? I don't know what I said, but thanks, Sarah. He helps create the Waldorf schools. Okay, so he has this mission here on Earth. And when you start to really dive into his work, he deeply studies also our soul's descent based on the stars from conception to birth and death. And then also he's done a lot of study on that's where we get that. A lot of the studies is where, what were the constellations? What were the stars speaking to us at different points of history where we had wars, different parts of history where we had peace, different parts of history where certain major historical figures were born, and how do they correlate with others? Okay, profound work. Fast forward, Will Susher brings us Astrosophy, the wisdom of the stars, through Sophia, the Sophia wisdom, this divine feminine wisdom aligned with the stars. So astrology that is aligned with Christ. Okay, it's a new star wisdom that connects humanity with ancient wisdom of the stars aligned with Sophia Christ. And there's several books that you can read on him. I've been reading both Steiner's work and Will's work for the last few years, just soaking it up like a sponge, which is why a year ago this time, I shifted how I was using astrology, human design, the gene keys in my offerings to the world.
And you bought 20 books on astrology.
In like the middle of the night, I bought.
Literally, there was
bought,
Amazon packages coming almost every day. I was like, another book?
I was like, research Christian astrology some more, and I bought like, and this year has been a deep dive, and it was like I can see in my life's path how it's all aligned. It's all aligned. First got into astrology when I was at Standing Rock. I started to be drawn to the stars, and then when I found out that I'd always thought that I was born under the sun of Gemini, and then all of a sudden I discover on my birthday that actually the sun is in the constellation of Taurus.
Also, if you how she talks about Rudolf Steiner, she talks about him, you'd think that he's still alive, and he's just like walking around.
He is alive.
I didn't know that he wasn't still living and writing books until like.
But he is alive because his stories live on, his wisdom lives on, his teachings live on. So he lives on in that. And yeah, I'm inspired to be a bridge. I long for peace and unity and connection above it all. So yeah, that's why I'm called to this. So I love the Astrosophy system, and now in all my work, okay, that my work is aligned with the mathematics of this Astrosophy, as well as the translation of the stars and the zodiac through this system. Okay, it takes us back to the ancient original philosophy and archetypes, translations of the zodiacs. What I will say, okay, so the unity of Christ and Sophia must be seen as a differentiated wholeness, a dynamic wisdom between logos and wisdom. We're talking about a wisdom here that connects with God. And what is God? And I'm using the word God, and we say Yahweh, the breath of life. Love. We're talking about love here, okay? A love story written in the stars with Jesus's star story. And if his story is written in the stars, why wouldn't ours been too? Why wouldn't our story be written in the stars as well? And I had a thought, and it was just.
You can also, if you know, the second that the universe was created, God had to think about exactly when everybody was going to be born, exactly when Yeshua was going to be born, to put everything out in the stars, like pre-planned genius. Master creator.
Oh, love. That's what I was getting at. Love. Okay. So love. In the translations of the stars through Astrosophy, love is the theme woven through the whole picture. It's love. And what we see in the tropical system, in the translations of the zodiacs, is a lot of fear. When we hear Mercury's in retrograde, there's a fear frequency that comes up, okay? Through this, when we're talking about Mercury in retrograde, we're talking about a time when the energy of the universe slows us down. Think about our communication. Think about how we're speaking. Slow down in life, okay? It's not based in fear, but in love and in faith. When we're talking about Cancer in the zodiac, right? We just moved through Cancer to get to Leo. Cancer isn't the crab that puts its shell up, that is too emotional, and the things that we've heard about.
Well,
yeah, all the things.
Body is actually.
Yeah. The crab in Astrosophy, Cancer represents the rib cage that holds the heart of Christ. That's beautiful. That's love-based. And when we look at the transformational journey that happens starting in Aries and moving through Pisces, it is this beautiful story that not only teaches us about ourselves and how and transforming ourselves, returning to our true authentic self. It goes through and teaches about different aspects of our being. Aries that balances the left and the right brain, the logical mind with the visionary mind. Taurus, who teaches us about activating our throat. So we move through this whole system. Right now we're in Leo. So Cancer, the rib cage that holds the heart of Christ, prepares our inner world, prepares our breath, holds our lungs. So in that season, okay, yeah, it's seen as nurturing ourselves at the highest aspects, paying attention to our breath, Yahweh, the breath of life that moves through us. So could it be associated with feelings? Yeah. Sensitive? Yeah. Because the inner journey is a journey of feeling, being vulnerable and sensitive. And if we take that season and we contemplate that and we choose to be intentional about our inner world, and then when Leo season comes, we're prepared to drop into the heart. Leo with Regulus, the royal star that rules the heart of Christ. Leo ruled by the sun, the soul, the Christ. We start to see this different picture unfolding, not Leo who needs to be the center of attention, which is a description.
From the heart.
Leo that leads from the heart. So in the way that I use Astrosophy and I interpret this is through the lens and the frequency of love. And it's a beautiful story that unfolds in that, okay? In this Astrosophy, it's no longer depicting humanity as helpless objects of the rhythms and movements of the star. Like there's a shadowy part of like fear-based predictions of the future. Oh, we can see that Mars plays a huge role in any time we've had wars on the planet. But what do we know about Mars? Mars is our internal wars, that all wars are created because some humans haven't dealt with their internal turmoil and they're projecting that outwards. That creates war, division, okay? So it's these kind of aspects. So then if we know those things, then we can say, oh, World War happened when there were these certain things happening in the sky. So when this happens again, we can be aware of it and know that Mars is bringing up our internal stuff. So we need to deal with that on our own and not be projecting it out and creating outward war.
And if we think about how the moon affects us and how the moon affects our water, we can think about how Jupiter affects us, which is the biggest planet in our solar system, how the sun affects us, how the planets that are the closest to us affects us.
Yeah, which originally those would have been the ones that they were most concerned with. So this new idea, okay, this new gift to us puts us as sovereign, free beings, but also with a gift from God that can help guide us, help us to know what's happening, right? In Steiner's research of Yeshua's life and that of other historical persons and events, he begins to witness that there's connections in the configurations of the heavens. The experience that man was not only a creature, but was on the road to becoming a co-operator, a co-creator, even with the cosmic Christ, okay? It is my belief that all sciences lead you to the sacred sciences eventually, because perhaps we're all in search of God, and that is where we find ourselves, because all of our paths lead home. I want to also share that there is no system or spiritual science that's greater than your own intuition, your own connection to God, your own heart. And everything that I do is all about dropping into the heart, trusting your intuition, reconnecting our relationship with the divine, okay? And that connection is found in nature, in the plants, in the animals, in the water, in the mountains, in the ocean, and in the stars, right? So perhaps along the way, our disconnection with nature has something to do with where we are now. And so what is the solution is to create more time and more attention and more focus on our relationship with nature. I'm going to see if anyone has questions. Does anybody have any questions in here? I loved Tima's question. Is it possible that we are in a long transitioning period to the age to come? Yes. Yeah, Timo, you and I are going to go deep soon too. But there's a lot of signs that even in these 7-year periods, starting with 2020 to 2027, that we're in an opportunity for more collective and personal transformation than we will see in our lifetime. That's like going to project us forward. The word for let's stop the share for just a second. If I have time, I'll share that story. So the word for apocalypse actually means the unveiling, right? So there's different words from it in etymology, like it's an awakening, an unveiling, a stripping apart, peeling back the layers. Nothing to be afraid of. It's an invitation right now for us to peel away the layers. Starting, the only person we can control is ourselves. So to look within ourselves, right? So, yeah, it's a beautiful time and a deeply transformational time. And that includes looking within ourselves. And of course, we're going to be experiencing a lot of turmoil, a lot of suffering. If you're in this space with me, I know many of you that are alive right now, yeah, we're all moving through a lot of things. What I find fascinating though, with understanding the sacred sciences, is knowing that we're all also transitioning through the same things at once. So when I started doing these things, doing these readings, I was having all these like powerful moments. So to look with, to be sitting across from somebody and to witness them and to feel them and to see this like light go on when they see themselves in this story written for them in the stars. They see themselves in their astrology and their human design and their gene keys aligned with the mathematics of the astrosophy that I'm using. And I witnessed that and I'm thinking, wow, I mean, it only drew me closer to the divine. And then when I start studying the transition, so I handwrite human design and gene keys through the mathematics of this astrosophy. And today I decided, well, let's see what we're going through today. Okay, can I share screen again?
Well, I also wanted to, so remember how we were talking about April 3rd, 33.
Yeah.
The angel number 333 means support. So whenever you see it, it's meaning that your spirit guides are supporting you and sending you love.
Of course. Okay, for some of you that are watching that might not know what this is, if you've never heard of human design before, human design is a newer sacred science based on our astrology. As you can see here, we got Saturn, Sagittarius, and Scorpio. It's based on the astrology, but it gives us a blueprint of more of our energetic body, our spiritual body, how our emotions operate in the world, connected to other people, how the mind works, the throat, our hearts, our energy centers. Like, why do some people have more sustainable energy than other people?
How different people affect us.
How different people affect different people. How some people can go into a crowded room of people and it just lights them up, and how others immediately feel drained and exhausted and can't stay long. You know, this is a beautiful new science, new sacred science that's been given to us to really, really deep dive into understanding ourselves in a new way. And again, we are sovereign above it all. So again, these are like play things, ways for us to play and learn about ourselves, but not be so held tight to them, where you're like, I'm a Leo and this is why I'm like this way, or I'm a projector and this is why I'm like this way. So it is a brilliant and beautiful system that helps us on our spiritual journey, our transformational journey. And I handwrite these charts in the Astrosophy mathematics, because that's another thing we could go into. They are calculated through the tropical system. And then we also have the gene keys, and the gene keys goes even deeper. And the gene keys reveals to us the shadow aspects of these keys within ourselves, our DNA.
Yes. And how we get the gene keys is every one of these little things. They don't say the actual, oh, they do. So every one of these little numbers here are a gene key or a gate. So that's how we get our gene keys or our gates.
Yeah. So we're looking at those pinpoints. Monet likes to call this like
this is a, you can either call this a, like the circuit board, but I like to call it, you know how a prism, if you shine the light through a prism, it goes out in different ways. If it's, you know, different edges and stuff like that. So I like to call this is our crystal, ourselves, and wherever the light shines through the crystal is wherever we are lit up in these ways. So
where
our
God
crystal
lights us up.
just lights up in different ways.
I know, I love it. She's like, that's where God lit me up. Crystal is also based on the word Christ, crystalline, crystal. So then next we had the gene keys, and we're not going to go deep into this. I just wanted to share this part so that I can tell them where we're at today. So the gene keys can help us to dive even deeper, so we can look at those aspects of ourselves and our energetic system. Like, okay, here's where the sun was when I was born. It activated gene key 21. So let me look at the gate 21, and then let me look at the gene key. So the shadow of the gene key shows us where we're still in a fear frequency or a victim frequency within ourselves. So we can look at that part of ourselves, and ultimately we can embrace that shadow, that fear within ourselves. We can learn to become aware of it, which helps us activate and release the actual gift that we're here to share. What's the gift that we're here to share? And that's that higher vibration. And then the city is the highest vibration of this aspect of ourselves. So it's what we're striving to embody. Okay. So understanding these parts of ourselves just helps us with a deeper awareness of who we are. And we can understand our life's work, our purpose, how we share our hidden gifts, these aspects of ourselves. I wanted to share that because that is part of the gifts that we share. And I wanted to share with you that today, I had to see what's today in the Astrosophy system mathematically. Where are we? So we know that the sun is in Leo today, and it activates the DNA code 33. We have 64 DNA or gate or gene key. The 33rd. The number for Christ is 33.
The angel number for 33 is support and love from your spirits.
And gene key 33 angels. Is called the final revelation. You cannot make this stuff up. I looked this up right before the call, and I was like, oh my goodness. If you have the gene keys, read this gene key, because this is what we're moving through as a collective right now. So this is what humanity is moving through. The sun in the code of 33, the final revelation. The shadow is forgetting. So it's literally the fear that led us to forget who we are connected to the divine. It is what created separation, the idea of separation, but we are actually never separate from God. So that is the shadow, is the forgetting, the Maya, where we've forgotten our true self, which is like the underlying theme of what are we talking about? And then the gift is mindfulness, to remember who you are yourself, to witness yourself, to return home to love. And then the city is revelation, which is the ultimate to return to love.
Also, with every gene key, we have 3 things that we transform into. We might not get to transform into the city in this lifetime. It might take us a couple, but it's what you master. The shadow is the lowest part, the lowest frequency in that gene key. And then you transform it, you work through those shadows into the gift. And then once you work through the gift, you go into the city. So most people go from the shadow to the gift. And
and so the city then reflects revelation, which is the trick is to fall in love with your own story and follow it without holding anything back. That is the trick of it all, isn't it not?
Yeah.
So I love it. Like if you have already worked with us before, you know that
like eternal love.
Yeah. What we do is
that's the photo of eternal love right there.
It's like pure joy, no matter what's happening in your story, that you continue to follow it and don't hold anything back. You stay vulnerable, you stay true to yourself, you stay open. You let it all, everything that happens, bring you right back to the heart. Always dropping right back into the heart. What's the story I'm here to write? So yeah, I just wanted to, I'm going to see if you have any questions, but I wanted to share that if you are an eternal student in this way and you are inspired to learn more about the sacred sciences, this fall, we're going to be hosting 2 different group mastermind mentorship courses, programs. It's going to start September 19th when we're under the transit of devotion, grace, and awakening. And I didn't know that when I picked it, but then when I looked it up, that's what we're starting under, the devotion with that. And one group is going to be focused on becoming the alchemist of your family, transforming, changing the world from your family within outward. So focusing on the heart and soul of your family, understanding your children, your partner. It could be that you want to do it with your mom. It could be that you, it's just you and your daughter and you want to do it. But it's a journey that we're going to take together to understand the heart and soul of your family through these sacred sciences. If you work with families too, it's a gift in that, because
whatever you call family,
we're going to meet every other week for 6 months. I wanted to do this transformational journey over a period of 6 months this time, because I wanted to give us time to really understand these aspects of ourselves and integrate them and connect, hold each other's hearts and prayers, and be in community in that way. So that's why we're doing this over a 6-month period. So one group is going to be for family and one group is going to be for individuals. And it's kind of like a little, it's mentorship as well as like a mystery school, but going through your own soul's blueprint. So how do we learn anything? We learn through play and connecting with other people. And so if you want to learn the sacred sciences, what better way than to understand yourself through them? So it is a devotional prayer to not only transform yourself, but to create that in the world by devoting to your own purpose, to your own healing, to your own transformation, to your own evolution. And of course, there's always, when 2 or more gathered, there's a lot to be said about that we can create miracles and healing and magic in that way. So that's coming up. If anybody's interested about that, then let me know. And
those are the 4 royal stars.
Yeah, those are 4 royal stars. So does anybody have any questions? Oh, that's what I wanted to do, wasn't it?
Wait, can I?
All right, does anybody have any questions? Oh, thank you all.
Can I see it?
Yes. If you've, oh yeah, I can unmute people. So if anybody has any questions, let me know. I encourage you all, if you haven't read this, to read Braiding Sweetgrass. I was going to read the story of Sky Woman tonight, but sorry, we've already been on here an hour, 45 minutes, so I'm not going to do that. But reading the story of Sky Woman, if you can, is beautiful. Yeah. I am grateful for all of you. I'm going to be doing some of these things more often. I really love this. I love connecting with you. And
will you write down in there what it's called?
What?
In
the
chat.
book? Yes. Yes, I will. Oh, there we go. Okay, yeah, I will. I love you all. If nobody has any questions, I'm going to say good night and then good morning. Oh, Timo,
You have to write it before,
okay.
because then it'll be gone once we end it. And I don't even, can you type it? Because I'm not really great at typing.
So if anybody has any questions later on, if you're watching this later, send me, you can send questions to ratings address. You can send questions to poseforpeace@gmail.com. That's POESFORPEACE@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram. If you don't already follow us on Instagram, Pose for Peace, Sarah Soulshine Poe,
Monet.po.
So you can find us there. If you haven't signed up for our newsletter, we send a lot of love notes through there, and I made a devotion myself to share more in that space. And social media is changing, and people want to see reels, and I like to write long, beautiful love letters, and like I still like to write. So I write things out when I'm inspired to write about what gene key we're moving through, or what transits, or something that moves through me. I am now devoted to writing those things out, and I'm going to be sending that out in our newsletter. So if you want to receive that, let me know, and I'll put you on our love letter list. And then if you are watching this and you haven't had a session with us, and you would like to either receive an intuitive Astrosophy and human design session, or go through the whole big deal with us and go through that both of those systems, as well as the gene keys, and then I write up a 50-some page book for you that's like your soul's blueprint and my interpretation of it and things like that. If you're watching this and you would like to receive something like that from us, let me know, and I'll send you a little offering to receive a little gift off of that.
Yeah. And I am a watercolor artist.
Oh, yes, you are.
And I bring your astrology and your my art, your spirit animal, or really whatever, because I do landscapes and I do animals, and I bring in your astrology, and I put your constellations in your art. That you get
she does commissions for that, and she does that for like families or couples.
It's called cosmic art, is what I call it.
And I know that some of you are all the way in other countries, and maybe someday we'll get to see each other in person, which I would love. But if you're in the States, and especially if you're on the East Coast, we want to create ways to see each other in person. So we're going to be doing more things like that. I want to have gatherings that are free, and then also offerings where one of our new offerings is going to be to do an intuitive painting class. She's one, people do those wine and sip classes, which Monet is inspired to do. Go ahead. Sorry.
So a new thing that I have kind of just has popped in to my head, because I have a lot of things that pop into my head, and this is the one that I'm like, yes, is to do a cacao ceremony where it starts with cacao ceremony and meditation, and then stepping into your intuition and your childlike self, and then painting. And painting, I'll be teaching basic watercolors along with colors and meanings, giving a basic on watercolors, and helping you step back into your inner child, and to paint with your feelings and whatever really just comes out in that moment, and to really just drop in and paint and be more creative.
I know, I'm so excited about that. Yes. So we're going to be doing that in Charleston. Yes, it is. So we'll be doing those in Charleston and Asheville and Atlanta for sure. We'll be doing the painting ones. And then if people want to add like a mini readings, we'll be doing that along with those events. We need to gather together more, be in the heart more. It is time. It is time. And whatever that thing is, like, I'm just going to inspire this before we close out the night. Whatever that thing is like really speaking to your heart right now. That maybe it's a dream that you've already had. Maybe it's a dream that you've been holding on to for a really long time, and you're just like, you're maybe in fear that it's never going to happen. You've doubted yourself. You're wondering about giving up. I want to inspire you to hold on, allow it to deepen your faith even more, because we are really here to embody those parts of our heart, those dreams and those parts of our higher hearts. And we never know. It's like the moment is right around the corner for those things to come to fruition, where those synchronicities happen, the more we have radical faith and really are living from the heart space and doing the thing, following
Literally,
the thing. It's like
3 today.
Exactly.
Not even
And that's the
20
things that
minutes before,
happen.
she's like, what is the gene key
I
again? I'm
know.
like,
And if I told you where I was last week when I decided to do this, we'd be here for a little bit longer. But yeah, I was like in a tender heart space last week and feeling doubt and wondering, what am I doing? Do I really need to do this? And I was having a lot of doubt come up. And then I got the ping, why don't you do this? I want you to do this. And here we are. And so that's the thing. So I just want to continue to inspire you to really keep doing the thing. And last thing, if you have a thing that you're holding on to, a prayer that they're holding onto your heart, and you want to share that, and we would love to hold that with you. So if there's something that you are, you want us to hold in prayer with you, whether it's a dream or a fear that you're moving through or whatever, don't drop it in the chat here. Message me, email me that, whether it's on my Instagram or and whatever, and let me hold that. Let us hold that together with you, whether you're watching it now or later. And I love you all so much. Keep holding the love. Keep living from your hearts. I can't wait to wrap my arms around all of you, even you, my new sisters in Australia. So much love. I'm wishing you all well. Good night. Good night. Good night. Mwah. Love you.